Let's go ahead and begin creating the joints for our repulsor. So we're going to begin with this front repulsor right here. And to start, we want to create a joint sort of at this base section. So with this geometry selected, let's go ahead and press Control or Command 1 to hide everything that is not selected. And then what we'll do now is go to the Create Joints. We'll hold V down and we'll just create a joint right around that vertex. And then we can just translate it into position here. And then now what we want to do is adjust the orientation of this joint to sort of better match the actual position of this geometry. So go to Attribute Editor, we'll hold Control or Command, middle mouse click in the X axis there for the joint orientation, go to the Y axis, and we just want to adjust these values until it's roughly in line with the geometry. And something like this should work for us. All right, so that should work. Let's go ahead and press Control and 1, go ahead and show everything. And now what we want to do is create a joint for this sort of pivot piece right here. So with that geometry selected, let's press Control or Command 1 to hide everything that is not selected. And then now what we're going to do is place a joint at the center of the grid. So we'll go to Create Joints, hold X, we'll snap that joint right to the center of the grid. And now what we're going to do is actually use a parent constraint to basically snap or align the joint to the position of the actual piece of geometry here. So what we want to do is first select our geometry. We're going to shift select our joint. We'll go up here to Constrain, Parent. We'll open up the option box. We can reset our settings and make sure we're working at the same settings. And then all we want to do now is just uncheck the Maintain Offset. So what that's going to do when we hit Add, basically just going to snap the joint to the position of this geometry, and more specifically, the position of the actual pivot point. So you can see our pivot point is sort of right at the center of that piece of geometry and right at the edge. And when we did that parent constraint, it snapped our joint to that same area, which is exactly what we want. Now we actually don't need that parent constraint anymore. We just wanted to get that positional information. So we'll go up here to Windows, Outliner. We go ahead and open up that box there, and you can see we have a joint to parent constraint. Let's go ahead and select it and just delete it because we don't need that anymore. We can close the outliner. And now we just want to match the orientation of this joint more with the geometry. So we can hold Control or Command, middle mouse click in the joint orient here until we get it roughly in line where it needs to be. So something like that should work. We might adjust the Y value just a little bit there, and then the Z. Again, just trying to match sort of that position of the geometry itself. So something like that should work just fine for us. Let's press Control or Command 1 to show everything again. And now what we want to do is create the joints for the actual hose or cable piece here. So we'll go ahead and select this cable piece, and we'll press Control, Command 1 again, just to isolate it from everything else. And then what we're going to do is place a joint right here at the base. So we'll go to Create Joints. Now this piece is actually a NURB surface, which means our snap to points or our snap to vertex is not going to work. What we need to do is go up here to the snap to curves. So with that enabled, let's go ahead and place our joint, and it's going to snap to the actual curve. So you can see we can get it snapped along that curve there. Then we can press W to go to the transform manipulator. And then we'll just place this roughly into position here. And then we might actually go ahead and adjust the orientation. So in the attribute editor, we'll come down to joint orient, and we'll begin adjusting this value here, roughly matching it a little bit more in line with the actual geometry. Kind of just want to follow that flow of the geometry. All right, something like that should work. And then we want to create another joint right along here. So we still have the snap to curve. So we'll create a joint sort of in this middle section here. We'll place it, and then we can translate it where we want. We might need to go ahead and turn off the snap to curve. So we'll go ahead and highlight that. And that will allow us to translate this joint around. We'll roughly place it in the center of this cable. All right, there we go. And then we want to place a final joint right here at the end. So we'll go to Create Joints. We'll turn on the snap to curves. We'll snap it right to that curve point. And then we can go ahead and uncheck that to turn it off. And then we'll translate this into position. We might quickly just adjust the orientation just a little bit on this joint. All right, there we go. And now we actually need to go ahead and set up the parent relationship for all of these joints. So this joint at the end needs to be parented to the middle joint here. So we'll go ahead and select this joint right here. We'll shift select that middle joint. We'll press P to parent. So now you can see that this joint has become the parent of this end joint. And then with the middle joint selected, we're going to shift select this base joint. We'll press P to parent. So now you can see that this joint right here has become the parent of both of those other joints. And then now what we need to do is let's actually go ahead and press Control and 1. Go ahead and show everything again. And this joint for the actual cable piece needs to be parented to the center joint right here. So we'll go ahead and select that joint. We'll shift select this joint right here, press P to parent. And then finally, this joint at the very end needs to be the parent of all the rest. So we'll go ahead and select this joint right here, hold shift, select that last joint, press P to parent. And there we go. So we've set up the entire joint relationship that we need for the repulsor. So we start off with this very first joint, and then we go ahead and move along here. And this will actually allow us to rotate sort of this main repulsor section. And then up here, these joints will give us the ability to manipulate the actual cable piece. So now that we have all the joints created for this repulsor section, let's go ahead and repeat this exact same process for this middle section. So we'll go ahead and do that in the next clip.